So we're ready? Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming tonight. So the presentation that I have here is the one that I use when I go and volunteer at schools, and bits of pieces of it I also do when I volunteer in Israel. I presented it to Holocaust survivors in Israel, and today, actually, I got a call that in my next visit to Israel, perhaps I'll do an activity for actually kids who have cancer. They have special summer camps and preschools for them in Israel, so I'll do that. And also when I volunteered in South Africa and in Vietnam and Cambodia. I think what's really important is that the time that we spend here is really not about me, it's really about you. So if you guys have any questions or things that you want to go through that you'll find meaningful, then please feel free to jump in. And I don't even have to go through the whole thing. It's quite extensive, and we don't really have to go through all of it, just things that are important to you. Okay, so we'll start with a literature review. These are some of the books that I've read that was kind of like my path towards research of happiness, and I wanted to share. The first one is How We Choose to Be Happy. These are two consultants, business consultants, that at a certain point decided to write about happiness, and they would go to communities all over the world like ours, and they would ask people, well, who is the happiest person here? But people would always point at the same person, and they asked those people, what's your secret? They came up with 9 principles. It's an easy read. It is most delightful. It's a great book. You'd fall in love with it. It's really good. The other one, which is a little bit more academic, is by Professor Tal Ben-Shahar, who is originally from Israel and taught at Harvard University. It's the biggest class that was ever attended by students at Harvard University. Now he actually moved to Israel, and he teaches at the Interdisciplinary Center in Herzliya, which is my hometown. He writes extensively about happiness. His first book, I believe, is Happier, Learn the Secret of Daily Joy and Lasting Fulfillment. It's a wonderful book, a little bit more academic, but still an easy read, and I highly recommend it. We need to go this way and this way. Perfect. Okay. The next one is a classic, Daniel Goleman, who wrote the famous book about emotional intelligence more than 25 years ago. It's a classic, very important, still very relevant. Was really most influential in the research in the field of emotional intelligence, and it's a must for people who really care about it. The other one, which was published a few years ago, is Stumbling on Happiness, Daniel Gilbert, which I think teaches at Harvard as well. This book is important. It's an important read. It's interesting. It's a little bit more complicated in terms of talking about neuroscience, and but I still recommend it. It has some very practical advice as well. Very important. Okay, and of course the little book that I wrote, If You Want to Be Happy, Be, and we're actually gonna start with that. So I say in the book that the goal in life is not to be rich, famous, or married, but rather to be happy. The most important relationship in your life is not with others, but with yourself. To say I love you, one must first be able to say I, and to love, appreciate, and be happy with that I. However, I alone, with no meaning, or just I, and I, soon becomes a disappointing I. And of course, I took it from Pirkei Avot, Ethics of our sages in Judaism, that articulated it very, very well. All right, all research indicates that happy people live longer, healthier lives and are better friends, better parents, better leaders, and better professionals than unhappy people. Happy people enjoy their lives and what they do. They do many things out of love and not out of hate, jealousy, or competition. Through my extensive research in the field of happiness for many decades, I've concluded that happy people seem to be much happier than unhappy people. All right, if you choose money over happiness, you will get neither. If you choose happiness over money, you may get both. Some people think that happiness will happen only in the future. Not now. Right now, they're miserable. Yet, they think that in a week, in a year, in a lifetime, they will be happy once they are done with homework, pass a test, finish school, get a job, quit that job, find a boyfriend, find a girlfriend, find both, break up with them, get married, get a divorce, have children, get the kids to leave home, get $1 million, buy a toy, a bigger toy, and a better toy, and it never works. This whole model, it's called the if-then. If I'll have this, then I'll be happy, never works. And I think many of us realize that we just changed the if. We never changed the then. We changed the if, yeah? So we started small, and then we go bigger and bigger and bigger without realizing that the model itself is faulty, and that's why it doesn't work. Let's see, that's what we, yeah. All right, ego. So when you talk to people nowadays, and even in the research, there's a lot of criticism against ego. People say ego is a bad thing, is something that we should resist, fight, shrink, minimize. Yet, I think that ego actually has a very important role in our life. And my definition of an ego, you don't have to agree, but my definition of an ego is the desire to have power, money, control, fame, recognition, and sex. Okay, these are the things that we really want to have in life. That's our ego. So if this is the definition of ego, ego actually serves us well in a way that it prevents us from walking naked down the street. Your ego tells you this is not a good thing. It's not legal. I may get arrested. People may take their cell phones and take pictures of me and then post it on Facebook and tag me, and there will be shaming. So your ego tells you this is a bad idea. Do not do it. So the ego actually serves a very important purpose in our life because it prevents us from embarrassment. But many people that find their life, when you ask them, why are you here or what do you live for, they would basically give you the answers of ego. And unfortunately, through my volunteer work in high schools, when you ask students, what do you want to do when you grow up, what do you think they tell me?
Be rich.
Yeah. They used to tell me, I want to be a millionaire. Now I guess millionaires are kind of middle class, so they're like, I want to be a billionaire. And you ask them why? Why do you want to be a billionaire? And they say, so I'll have a big house, and I'll have a lot of women or men, or I can do whatever I want. So this is what they say. I'm going to live my life for my ego. Ego is good to serve you and protect you. But if you live your life for your ego, it guarantees very mediocre life. You will live, but very mediocre life. Ego for itself as a goal is not a good goal to have in life. Yet so many people in our society today, specifically young ones, that they get what's from their eyes is important in our society. They're like, yeah, I'm here for the money. I'm here for the wealth. I'm here for the power. I'm here for the recognition. All right. Okay, assuming our ego makes us happy, who should be the happiest people? Again, it's a wrong assumption. I'm saying it in advance. But assuming that those things that I've listed, the power, the money, the recognition, the fame, the control, the sex, these are the things that would make us the happiest. So which group, constituency in our society, allegedly, based on this wrong assumption, should be the happiest, the most fulfilled, if ego is the one that would get you? Like as a group, who do you think should?
Movie stars and professional athletes.
You are right on. You are right on, because people sometimes say billionaires, but I explained that some billionaires actually try to stay anonymous. But Hollywood megastars, they cannot stay anonymous because their fame is the reason that they're so successful and wealthy. So they cannot be anonymous. They have to be well known, and they get a lot of recognition. Yet, it doesn't work. And we actually know it. Usually when I go to groups, I tell them that I'm not that well versed in this world, but you can kind of look at the old generation and think of Elvis Presley or Marilyn Monroe. And recently we can think about Prince and Michael Jackson and Robin Williams. And the list goes on and on and on and on and on and on. Those people really had everything according to the ego. They had tons of money, they had recognition, they had sex with whatever, supermodels, whoever they wanted. Everybody knew them, yet they died because they were either overdosed or they committed suicide. And these are two things that happy people don't do. Happy people do not overdose and do not commit suicide, and people know it. Nobody would make an argument that Robin Williams died in a car accident. Nobody would say that Michael Jackson was assassinated. People know how they died. But if you're going to ask the average American, if you'd go and say, ma'am, would you like to have more money in your life? Sure. Would you like to have more recognition? Yes. Would you like to have more power and control? Of course. Would you like to have more sex? Bring it on. Yet we know, or we can say that those people who really had whatever we can ever imagine of those things, they died miserably. But we somehow say, it's not going to happen to us. We are different. When we're going to have all this money and recognition and sex, to us it's going to be very, very different. It's not. All right, that's me. When I was in the Israeli military back in the day, yeah. So when I was very interested in leadership, and when I attended leadership trainings of the Israeli military in the late 80s, they taught us a lot about leadership. And then when I started to attend leadership trainings where I currently work, I realized that in those 20 years, the field has changed dramatically. But they asked us the first day when I started here, they asked us, what is the most important characteristic of a leader? So what do you think is the most important characteristic of a leader? Confidence. Confidence is great. What else? Charismatic. Charismatic, that's a really good one. What else? Happy, yeah, yeah. That's very good, Sachi. Yeah, no.
Collects the information and makes a good decision with the information they're given.
Excellent. That's very good. You guys clearly have better answers than the one that I gave, because I was giving the laundry list from the late 80s that they taught us that a good officer, a good leader has to be a role model, which is, of course, important. Needs to have a lot of technical knowledge specifically about what they're supervising. Of course, that's important, true, as well. But the answer right now in the field is very different. Any other guesses before I give you? Diplomatic is very important, true, but that's not the one that they gave us.
Have a goal, an overriding goal.
Focused and goal-oriented. Yes, you're right. You're right. That's a very, very important one. You're good. But that's not the one that... I'll tell you. Self-awareness. The number one characteristic for a leader is self-awareness. And when I talk to high schoolers, they don't get it. They're like, what do you mean? What's self-awareness? Self-awareness is you need to be aware of your own feelings. And once you do that, there's no other way but you start being aware of the feelings of other people. Okay? And this is important because feelings are very, very important in our lives. Countries go to wars because of feelings, of national pride and national feelings. Feelings are very, very important. Yeah, because there's a Barbara Streisand song, feelings, nothing more than feelings. So Daniel Gilbert says this is actually so important. Yeah, feelings are actually really crucial. Specifically, the way that I explain it to high schoolers is because as a leader, you lead people, not cell phones. It's something for youngsters, it's hard for them to understand. Computers and cell phones don't have feelings. The story that I use is I volunteer at a senior community in Israel, and actually did bring my laptop, unlike tonight. And I needed to connect it to the screen. And one of the residents, people who lived there, he was 95 years old. And he knew a lot about technology. He was really, really good, but he couldn't connect it. It just didn't work. And I purchased my laptop here, and I got very upset with my laptop. So in my heart, I talked to my laptop, and I told him, I said, I swear to God, if you're not connecting right now, I'll make sure to return you to Target. They said, you're gone. This is it. This is your chance. And then when the person who was 95 years old, when he was trying to do it, I even told my laptop, I said, I understand you don't like me. I get it. That's fine. But now you have a person who is 95 years old who is trying to help you, and even you're mean even to them. It's like, what kind of a person are you? But they're not a person, yeah? So eventually, the technology expert, he said, I'm going to walk to my room, with a cane and everything. And I told him, no, that's fine. We're going to leave the laptop, and I'm just going to speak without the presentation. But at this and when I got back to the US, I returned the laptop to Target. Yeah, because I promised him that. But at the same time, when I was having all those conversations and deep feelings and discussions with my laptop didn't have any feelings, any thoughts, any emotions, nothing. For him, it's a go, no go. I recognize the program, the software, or I don't. That's it. But for us people, it's all about emotions. Sometimes I even tell people, when people tell you, oh no, it's not personal very often, it is personal. Yeah, that's how we live our life. Emotions are very, very important to our existence. Once you are aware of your own emotions, what triggers you, what makes you upset, what makes you happy, then you start paying attention to the emotions of other people. And that means that hopefully you're not going to hurt them. Because when you hurt people, they really don't care about your technical knowledge that you have, and they really don't care much about you being a role model after you completely humiliated them or hurt their feelings. This is utterly important. So to say for a leader, the most important thing is self-awareness. You need to be aware of your own advantages, disadvantages, shortcomings. This is the most important characteristic. All right, Madonna. So I'm using this story because she's wearing a T-shirt that says Kabbalists do it better. Madonna practiced Jewish mysticism, the Kabbalah. And I attended a leadership program. They brought a hotshot, and this person, it's where I work, they sent me to this leadership training. There were 120 people from all over the world, and we had this really important conversation. And this person came to us, and he said, we have this promotion that we want to offer people, and you can be an executive employee. And he said, if you will be an executive employee, you will have more power, you'll be responsible for many people, and you will go up the pay grade, so you will make more money. And then he asked us, raise your hand if you want to be an executive employee, and everybody raised their hand. And the rest of his presentation was how to do it. It was a lot about forms and procedures and what kind of degrees you need to have and what kind of a pay scale, pay system you need to be on. And then after this important presentation, we went back to our small groups, and the professors asked us, well, what do you think about this really important presentation? And I realized that a lot of the people who were there really were bureaucrats. And for bureaucrats, when you show them forms, it's like sharks. When they smell blood, they're like, wow. So people started to say, well, these are the things that I need to do to get there. And very soon there was some tension in the group because they realized not everybody could be an executive employee. So people started to look, it's either you or me. And that means that there's a competition now between us. And so when it was my turn, we were sitting in a circle, and I just happened to be the last one. I just told them, I said, I told you that I'm originally from Israel, and it was in September, right before the Jewish high holidays. And I told them that I just read in the Israeli media on my phone that Madonna, she comes to Israel before the high holidays, and she usually has 2 concerts, but tickets can easily go for like $150 or $200. They're very expensive. So in order to sell tickets, Madonna gives extensive interviews to the Israeli media. And they asked Madonna, they said, what's up with you and Jewish mysticism, like Kabbalah? Clearly, you were not born Jewish, and now you come to Israel, like right before the Jew. What's the deal? So Madonna told them. She said, 10 years ago, I was the world. She said, I was not a millionaire, I was a billionaire. I'm one of the only people in the world that are known only by their first name. What's her last name? It's just Madonna, yeah? And then she said, I was everything, CDs and records and recognition and everything. And she said, yet something was missing in my life. So I just went to this dinner. I was sitting next to another actress, and she told me that she goes to the Kabbalah Center in LA, and then I started to go as well, and I find it very meaningful, and ever since I go to Israel. So I told everybody in my group, I'm not advocating for Jewish mysticism at all, but the point I told them that I'm trying to make is that Madonna 10 years ago and today has more money and power than all you and me and all the executive federal employees that will ever have. So I said, if you find meaning in your work, then go ahead and be executive employees. But if you just want to do it for the money, look at somebody who already has the money and the power and see that it's insufficient. And then they offered me a job. They're like, why don't you come? And yeah, so that's just pictures of Madonna and Guy Ritchie. She was married to him at the time, and they're with the president of Israel at the time, Shimon Peres, in 2007. The president gave Madonna the Bible. That was his present to her. And then it was just the president and Madonna, and that's why her husband divorced her. I'm just kidding. 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 Because I think she divorced him or something. Okay. And then I want to talk about failure. Okay. So it says here, we can't spell failure without you. Just kidding. That's not the main idea that I want to give. Really is the fear of failure. The greatest mistake you can make in life is to continually be afraid you will make one. Failure is very, very important, and there are many definitions of failure. I just want to talk about some aspects of failure, and my experience, again, that when I go and volunteer in high schools, that's the part that touches them the most, the power of failure. So Tal Ben-Shahar says in his books that we either learn to fail or fail to learn. Failure is actually very, very important, and it's part of every success. So let's look at some people who are very successful. The first one, I'm not going to tell you the name, but he actually did the impossible. He started a big company that we all use the products of this company, and was actually, when he was the CEO, was actually fired from a company that he himself started. Who is this person? Steve Jobs, very true. He did the impossible. There's not even a verb in the English language to describe something like this. You start this company, and then when you're the CEO, they ask you to leave. Unheard of. An ultimate failure, okay? And when you read his biography, somebody else would, when he was fired, he was still very wealthy. He could have taken all those attorneys and say, I'm going to sue Apple, and they're going to pay for it big time. They're going to regret the moment. But he was like, I'm actually not very good at legal terms and attorneys. I'm actually very creative. These are the things that I like to do. He started other companies that through a very interesting chain of events were later purchased by Apple. He came back, became the CEO again, and gave us the iPod and the iPad and the iPhones and all the great things ever since. Another political example is actually our former president, Barack Obama. So yeah, the first African-American president in the history of the United States. But people don't know that actually, when was it? In the late 90s, he was running for Congress, and his wife Michelle told him, "Do not run, you're gonna lose." And he was like, "No, don't worry, I know what I'm doing," and took all their savings, invested all their savings in his campaign, and of course he failed miserably. And that was the time when Michelle told him the famous sentence, "I didn't think that I would have to raise this family by myself," because the girls were very young back then, and she was like, I'm just doing all the work. You're campaigning to be a congressman, and you failed. It didn't even work. So he was really nobody in the Democratic Party. And in the year 2000, the Democratic National Convention was in LA. Barack Obama was not invited because he was nobody at the party. But somebody told him, "Fine, you can come and we'll get you in somehow," and everything. So Barack Obama flies with the money they don't have to LAX. And those of you who've been to LA know that LA has a pretty pathetic public transportation system. So Barack Obama at LAX, he goes and he tries to rent a car, and his credit card was declined. So he couldn't even get that. Definitely the lowest point of his career. Financially was not doing very well. His marriage was not very successful. Definitely didn't dedicate a lot of time to his kids and wife. Yet, 4 years later, he was actually one of the speakers at the Democratic National Convention because he was running for the Senate on behalf of the state of Illinois, was elected, and 8 years later gave the keynote address as a presidential candidate, and he was elected twice. So in our society, was focused on the success, but the theory says that you cannot be successful if the failure is actually part of your success. So if he wasn't down there, he couldn't have been up there either. All right. Generally speaking, people are saying that the way we learn is like babies or toddlers learn how to walk. So how does that happen? Because we have parents here.
Crawl first.
And then what?
And you grab onto things.
And you fall. Constantly you fall. But if we apply the logic that we use for ourselves as adults, then the baby would probably, if babies could speak at that age, would probably approach the parents and say, "You know what, Mom and Dad, walking is not really for me. You know, I'm not very good, and you know, I'm not doing that well. I'm not very stable. I constantly fall down." And the parent would say, "You know what, sweetie, you're an embarrassment, because all the other kids in the block, they already know how to walk, and you really don't do it very well, and you bring a lot of shame to the family, and then you're not very stable, and you fall down, and then you cry like a baby, maybe because you are a baby." But no, we all realize, we all went through this process ourselves of constantly falling down and getting up again and learning to do that. And we all accept that at a year and a half, or 2 years old, yeah, that's what babies should do. Yet somehow, when we grow up, we have to succeed immediately. The first time, we have to be very successful. Everybody has to know about it. And if we fail, we constantly shy away from it. This is a source of shame, and in some countries even excommunication, and in a certain extent even suicide, because you have failed. This is completely unacceptable. All right, get on the potty. So I didn't want to gross you up because I knew that we're going to have pizza here. So, but that's the same thing that we have learned about how to be potty trained. Again, there are many accidents and they stink. Okay, but we all went through this process. And besides, I really like this picture of this toddler checking his messages as he's sitting on the potty, and I said I'll include it in the presentation, irregardless. So I'm just thinking, perhaps do you guys have any questions or things that you want to discuss? We don't have to, but it's up to you. Okay, perfect, good. So we'll just continue. All right, so when those high schoolers tell me, okay, this is Mark Zuckerberg, the net worth was $3.5 billion. Right now it's different, and also he's not, did I change that?
He's married.
He's married, yeah.
Yeah, my single.
Yeah, I put not anymore, yeah. Because now he's married and he has a daughter and everything. But when the high schoolers tell me that they want to be billionaires, then I explain to them that there are two main avenues to become a billionaire. The first one is either you inherit the money, which is a very easy one. And the second one is I ask them, the same way that I'll ask you, like if you have a Facebook profile. Actually, no, you guys, so you all do have Facebook. And what I tell them is that with Facebook, basically, Mark Zuckerberg decided to provide a service to enhance communication between people. Whether he does it or not, it's a totally different issue. But if he would have a website saying, I want to become a billionaire, very few of us would even look at this website. He didn't do that. He would say, I'm providing a service, and all of us willingly, because it's not mandatory to have a Facebook profile, we opened our Facebook profile. So if you provide service, useful service, that millions and perhaps billions of people would want to join, that's a way to become a billionaire, and not by stating, I want to become a billionaire. This is my end goal, and now give me the money. People would not subscribe to that.
But we're not talking about being billionaires, we're talking about being happy.
True.
Why are we back on this again?
Because it is such an important part of our society. This is something that this ego or this desire to be successful is so important that sometimes people ask me, do you teach people to be happy? And I said, yes, but even more importantly, I unteach them how to be unhappy. One of the main sources of misery in our society is this ego, is this desire to have power and influence and money. That's how we look at everything. Even like one of my ideas is really to write a book like The Language of Happiness, because the language we use very often is all about numbers. How many people came tonight to this lecture? How much money do you make? How many books have you sold? Okay, are you married? No. Okay, do you have some dates lined up? Are you employed? Oh, no. Okay, how many job interviews do you have lined up? It's all like, show me the numbers. Show me the numbers. And the second question is, what's in it for me? What's in it for me? Because if there's nothing or there's very little for me, I'm out. I don't care. Okay? This is kind of like a very practical, and that's why it's important, I think, to show people that even people that according to our values are very successful, how did they become successful, and what is their attitude necessarily towards money or towards power. So that's why it was important for me to share the story. I think your question is right on. I think it's a very crucial one. It was important for me to show that even Madonna and others who actually had the money and the fame and the recognition said it was insufficient. And people who didn't recognize, mega stars who didn't recognize that, they got to the top, they realized that they are in the top of their field, they're really in the top of the world, and there's nothing there. Something is missing. And they're like, well, maybe I should try some substance abuse or other things. I'm going to smoke a little bit or more, and I'm going to try, and then it led them in a very tragic way. Or people who are really billionaires, but if you, because many, again, when I go to high schools, that's what they say. I want to be a billionaire, and it's not just our high schoolers. Our society very often is like that. We want to see the numbers. And once you just look at the numbers and not at people, there are consequences for that. All right. You guys recognize them? Who are these?
Warren Buffett.
And Warren Buffett. Yeah, that two of the most of the wealthiest people in our country. This is the private jet of one of them. I don't know which one. But one of the things that they did is they had a $600 billion challenge. So they met actually at a diner in Nebraska, and I think it was Warren Buffett who actually paid for the milkshake that Bill Gates drank. And they decided that they're going to give a lot, or maybe perhaps most of their fortune, most of their money, again, 600 billion, it's a big amount of money, to charities, to things that they care about. Very top on the list was diseases in Africa. And they challenged other people to do the same, other billionaires in the US to do the same. Again, the point I'm trying to make here is that even people who made it to the top and have a lot of money decide to dedicate it to a cause, social cause, bigger than themselves. And again, that's important for people who say, well, I want to be a billionaire. Well, look what billionaires are doing. After they have all this money, look what they're doing. And here, because now online you can see everything, this is the letter that they sent to the Rockefellers, asking them to give a lot of money for social causes. So very interesting. Okay, basically the point that I'm trying to make is that one should invest in the journey, not in the outcome. Our society very often is all about the outcome. Show me the number. How much money? What do you have? How many people? How many? Yeah, it's all about the numbers. That's how we're being tested, on the numbers. Our education system is all about the numbers. How many students graduated? What is the graduation rate? How many of them went to Ivy League schools? What is the percentage? It's all about the numbers, okay? The theory, the Bible, says to invest in the process, not so much in the numbers. Don't look at the numbers because maybe you'll fail, but the process, the journey, was very important. And when I go to high schools, the students ask me, what's a journey? What do you mean, invest in the journey, not in the outcome? Outcome, we understand, it's numbers. But what's a journey? What do you think is a journey?
It's the day-to-day. It's enjoying your day-to-day.
True.
And the process of whatever you're doing.
True.
What you put into it.
Very true. What I usually tell them, it's the people. It's the people. The people are part of the journey. The people that you meet every day in the street, in your neighborhood, in your family, in your community. That's it. The President of Israel said, when he was a speaker of the Israeli parliament, he said, ironically, it's the same people. He said, the same people that you're going to step over on your way to the top will be the very same people that would kick you in the butt on the way down. Because they will. Because you will go down. So he said, yes, it's ironically, it's the very same people, he said, based on his experience. So yeah, it's important to remember that the journey is very important. All right, perhaps I think we can stop for tonight, because I think we covered a lot. Do you have any questions?
Does it have to be a question?
No, it can be a comment, of course.
So I'm looking at this picture, and you're saying it's about the people, and there are no people in your picture.
True.
And there are people who are feel very, very connected with people, but there's a lot of journey in people's lives where there are no other people, where it's a solitary journey, and there are stages to whatever it is you're doing. You're studying, you're writing, you're learning, you're whatever it is, and there are. Like you were talking about the failure, there's a sense of despair or failure, or it's not moving fast enough. And that's also the journey.
Yeah.
And we shouldn't try to be pushing that away and making that not exist. Because that's just part of, the way we process things, the way we move through things. So, for me, that's very much the journey is, yeah, you might get frustrated and mad and sad, and there's happiness. And all of that is okay, because that's the journey. There's a Miley Cyrus song called The Climb. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
No.
And it's basically, you could have it as background music for your talk, right? And basically she says, it's not about getting to the end. It's about climbing the mountain to get there. And when you do that, you're going to slip, you're just going to scratch your knee, you're going to land on your nose, and that's all part of it. And that's okay.
That's beautiful, David. You just summarized the whole thing up. Really, it's beautiful. And I think you're absolutely right. In a way, we need to embrace our experience and say, yeah, that is actually part of the journey. And I think you're also right that part of the journey is alone. Some people would say, we were born to the world alone by ourselves, and we're going to leave the world alone. And yeah, you're absolutely right. It's part of embracing our journey and realize, wow, that's a journey. And again, to put it in perhaps a slogan, there's a saying that in life there are no mistakes, only experiences. Because
Absolutely.
if you learn from it, then it's not a mistake. It's part of your experience. And again, you should embrace it and say, I think it's a fair statement to say, this is not what I expected. I expected to go to the restaurant. I expected to be served. I expected that the food would be good. It's not what I expected. I don't like the food. The service is not good. That's a fair statement to say, but very often we tag, just like in Facebook, we tag our experience. And we say, what I'm going through right now is not an experience. It's a bad experience. And because it's a bad experience, I have the right to be frustrated, upset, rude, unkind to other people because I'm going through a bad experience right now. While if you just untag it and say, it's not what I expected.
It's just an experience.
It's an experience. It's not what I expected, and I'm still going to enjoy it. What is there to enjoy? Because there are some things to enjoy there. But it's not what I expected, and it's a legitimate claim to say, I went to the restaurant, I expected to be served. That's not really what happened. It's fine. It's really, and it's a realistic expectation to say, I'm going to go to a restaurant and get some food. Sometimes it doesn't happen for all kinds of reasons.
And, there's the prayer that we say, Yotzer or uvre choshech, oseh shalom uvre et hakol, right?
Could you just
So
translate?
I'll translate it now.
Thank you.
Okay, so it's referring to God as the one who creates light and makes darkness, who, say it again, who makes peace and who creates everything. And yet, it's a quote from Isaiah, and in Isaiah, he doesn't say creates everything. He says creates bad. And yet, the rabbis felt the need to change the bad. But let's not talk about the bad, right? We'll just say everything. The bad's included in the everything. But it's the way Isaiah puts it is very, very important, right? That everything comes from God, including the bad, and that's part of your experience.
Sure.
Right? And if you're always trying to run away from the bad, you're running away from half your life, if not more. And it serves no purpose whatsoever. You have to embrace it. It's all part of life.
That's beautiful. So even to say, you're right on, even to say the bad is tagging, is judgmental.
Sure.
To say what...
It just is what it is. You just go through it.
So there's actually a story, maybe I can finish with that, but it's a story that I found in the Hindu tradition, but I also found it in the Hebrew tradition. It's a story about a father and a son. They were very, very poor, and the father decided to take all their savings and to buy a horse. So they bought a horse, and all the neighbors were like, this is amazing, this is great, you guys you're right on. But then a week later, the horse ran away. And all the neighbors were like, that was your entire savings, money, you're gone, it's gone. It's terrible. And the father said, good news, bad news, who knows? Well, a week later, the horse came back, but not alone. He met some other horses, so suddenly they had like 11 horses instead of one. The neighbors were like, you guys are millionaires, this is insane, this is amazing, look at you. And the father said, good news, bad news, who knows? The son, the teenager, actually got finally on the horse to start riding it, and then fell down, was severely injured, and became disabled. And the neighbors were like, this is your only son, this is terrible. And the father said, good news, bad news, who knows? 2 years later, a war broke out, and all the young men were mobilized to the military. It was very, very dangerous. Of course, they didn't mobilize the disabled son. And this is really our life. If you look back at your life, and you can look at some experiences, not experience, even opportunities that you thought were amazing opportunities, a business partner, a romantic partner, any other endeavor that you thought, oh wow, this would be amazing, and it turned out to be not so good and sometimes even disastrous. And even the other way around, you could look at some experiences that you were like, this is the worst ever, this is terrible, I cannot believe I'm experiencing that, and it turned out to be actually a blessing in disguise. We tag everything because we assume that we know everything, but we really don't know much, or perhaps some people say know nothing really about that, and we should be open to the experience and say, that's not what I expected. I wanted something else, but this is my experience right now, I might as well embrace it, and who knows what good will come out of it. Or bad. Again, sometimes we think, oh, that's the best ever. I'm going to have so much fun at this family vacation. It turned out to be a disaster. But yeah, I thought it would be awesome. All right, thank you so much. Thank you. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
It's a nice picture, I like the picture.
Yeah? Okay. Yeah, but you're right. There are no people there. I never thought about it. I talk about people, but there are no people there. That's